And it just goes to show, like, how small the world is. And then even, if you reach out and just, touch someone, that, you can have a positive effect on their day. So, like, those are the things that I think that are very important.
I used to always tell my team that even if we don't buy a property from someone or sell them a property, our goal is just to make their day 1% better. So here's something I've been thinking about. When you're starting a business, there's no confusion about your purpose. It's to make money, create stability, and take care of your family. But then one day you kind of get there. You've created that stability, you've created that foundation, and suddenly the thing that was pushing you forward, it disappears. And that's what we're figuring out here on the other side of enough. I'm sitting down with entrepreneurs who have hit their goals, but they're still searching for something more. We're talking about what business excellence really looks like on the other side. Let's get into it.
Hey.
Hey-o. How you doing?
Good. I like how you got your microphone like right in your face. So I actually put my microphone right in my face.
Okay, so here's the story. I'm glad you're making fun of me about this because this is a good story. So I asked Justin Pichet, I'm like, hey, what kind of microphone do you use? Because I used to be the type where I wanted to research like every little different tech gadget and like pick the best one. And now I'm in the season of life where I just want what works. So he says he has this one and it has this cool thing where it like lights up when you talk.
I see that. That's very cool.
Yep. So it looks cool. About, what is it? $300. And sometimes, you know how sometimes you like to go budget with things, but other times when you like want to splurge, like let's say you get a new car and something breaks and they're like, do you want OEM parts or like aftermarket, but it's like your special new car, right? Yeah. You want OEM, even though it's twice as much and it's probably the same thing. You just kind of want it to still feel special. And so I bought the name brand Shure microphone stand for $40. And like there's off-brand ones for $20, but I wanted the logo on it, right? And it is literally the most beefy mic stand. Like it's probably 4 pounds. It's very heavy. It's solid metal. If you can see it, I don't know.
I can see it. Yeah. Oh,
it's solid metal, but it's tall. And I don't know how people use it because I'm 6'3". I'm sitting up with good posture, and it's at this height. Like, what kind of person? Like, how is this useful? And it's not tall enough to go from the ground. So what scenario? It's too tall for the desk and too short for the ground. So still figuring it out, but I'm stubborn. I want to use my name brand expensive mic stand, and that's why it's so tall.
Hey, I like good quality things. Buck turned me on to this Yeti. I think it's the Yeti Blue or whatever it is. I love this thing. I got the whole boom thing for it, and it's adjustable. I understand where you're going at.
Yep. Yeah. So with the mic, I know a lot of podcasts, they start out like bare bones and then upgrade later. But my thought is, if it's $300, like I'm gonna regret having my first 20 episodes with lower quality sound. So just get the best, right? Not the best, but get what's good quality, and then just start from good quality. So I'm enjoying it. It lights up green when I speak. It encourages me, makes me feel like everything I'm saying is approved by Shure.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for showing up. It's 5 a.m. here. So that means it's what, 2 p.m. in Dallas?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
So I have an intro that I'm probably going to be playing at these first episodes. And I think you kind of understand the heart behind this. But let's just dive right in. Why don't we talk about your background, Jeff? And I want to hear about your many businesses and kind of explore who you are as a creature, because you're a serial entrepreneur.
I am.
And you're about 10 years ahead of me in terms of season of life. And one thing I really enjoy about you is you're very accessible. You'll always take my call, and I've just really enjoyed our friendship over the years. Yeah, so let's dive in. Why don't you talk about yourself a little bit?
Do we want to go way back to how I got to where I am, or do we want to talk?
Let's fast forward. Let's briefly cover the pilot stuff, okay. And then I want to get more granular on your business ventures.
Sure. So I've been flying airplanes since around the age of 13. I'm about to be 45 next month. So I've basically grown up in the airplane business, and it's been good. It's been fun. I think that, you know, there's a seasonality to a lot of things, and I think what we'll talk about here in a little bit is my gravitation away from flying. So been a professional pilot for over 20 years at an airline, and I've just been an instructor, kind of been there, done it. I'm at the peak of, you know, in the airline business, the peak of what you can do. Like the next thing would be to, you know, go fly a 777 around the world, which I have zero ambition to do, to sit in a beer can, you know, at 38,000 feet for, you know, 15 hours at a time. So those things take life. They take your life away from you pretty quick. So anyways, so yeah, so about 5 years ago, I guess it's been 6 now, my dad passed away, and there was a pivotal moment in all of that, right? When you have such a big loss. And it just also happened to be the same year that Jennifer, my wife, and I stroked a massive check to, you know, the federal government. It was a rude awakening, for a lot of things. Like, you know, what am I doing? Why am I spending so much time away from my kids? Why are we paying all these, you know, massive, you know, tax bills? So basically Jen was like, well, if you want to go do that, you know, you have to, you know, start some businesses. And I'm like, okay, well, that's my cue. And I've always liked, you know, the idea of starting things, building things, interacting, connecting, you know, with people like yourself and, you know, the groups that we all kind of run in. And so that's kind of how we got to, you know, where we are now. And so I've got a lot of things going. Sometimes I think it's way too much. In fact, I know it's way too much. Spread thin, not only personally wise, but dollar wise, and just with all that. So, so where we're at currently is how Drew and I met over 5 years ago. We started in the land flipping business. We both kind of took our own paths out of that. You know, you started doing some subdividing, right, and some lending, and, you know, I started doing some lending, and then, you know, we started doing bigger things, and then, you know, those continue to build on each other. Like, oh, okay, I've had success in this, and so now I'm going to start doing other things. Currently, what I'm working on, some of it's with just myself, some of it's with partners, some of it's with my wife. And the big thing that we have going for right now is this brand, Bravara Home, that we're getting ready to launch next week. I think it's next week. Yeah, next week of the 10th. And basically, we're starting out with ceramic coated glass food storage. Basically, we saw a market in the gap. You know, I always talk about, is there a gap in a market? Well, is there a market in the gap? And we did weeks and weeks and weeks of analytics, and we determined that there was. So there's really only like one major player. So we're going after them, and we want to build this brand to have many different things, you know, and it's in the home space. So we want to start with the ceramic coated glass food storage. We want to get into knives. We want to get into cookware, bakeware, you know, everything that, you know, people use. Our goal, and I think it's very achievable, and I'll tell you why here in a second, is to make everything non-toxic, no plastics, easy to clean, and help families. I can't even tell you, and I'm sure you know, you go make a meal and like you're sitting there for 15 minutes scrubbing it, you know, in trying to get it clean for the dishwasher. Well, we think we've solved all of those problems, at least, you know, with our initial launch product of our food storage. So, and we can dive more into that if you want later. But so that's the one thing we have going right now. Another thing we have going is, and this is with a different partner, we're trying to build an apartment complex here in North Texas. Right now it sits at about 36 doors. So they're going to be like studio, you know, high efficiency. There's 2 colleges within a mile and a half either direction. So we think there's like a good spot for, you know, just a boutique-y type of high efficiency apartment in this area. So hopefully the goal is to get that off the ground at some point this year. I know that it's going to be extremely hard. So my partner in the deal, his name's Brian. He's a great dude. My daughter and his daughter are actually best friends. They spend as much time as they can together. And he's at a big multifamily developer. Like his projects are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So he's really just throwing me a bone here, helping me out, and, you know, structuring the deal, getting the money put together, and he's going to run the football end to end. So I'm really going to be more in a passive role in this, and I'll be the one, you know, cheerleading along, you know, with all that. So that's the second thing we have going. Another thing that I'm working on right now is we're in the middle of an acquisition of a commercial roofing company. And so everybody says, oh, commercial roofing company or roofing company, you know, it's very taboo, especially here in Texas. Like Texas is like the Wild West when it comes to roofs. I mean, that's one of the major reasons like our insurance premiums here in Texas have skyrocketed just because there's a lot of abuse and fraud in the roofing space. So the roofing companies are getting cracked down on, you know, by the laws, by insurance companies. And so what's unique about this opportunity is that this is a B2B company. They don't do door knocking. All of the business comes to them and it all flows through massive management companies, private equity, home office, and they've also got some budding relationships inside of the home services space, like big box stuff. So our goal is to close that deal in May, and I will become we'll call it the interim CEO of that for probably the next 24 to 36 months. That's the goal, at least with my partner and myself. And then it will eventually get to a point where, you know, I potentially won't have the skill set to keep it, you know, growing at good exponentials. So that's that. I'm trying to think of what else we got going right now. We've got a couple of land deals going back to the land thing. They're extremely complicated.
They're big land deals.
Yeah, they're very big land deals. I'm happy to share about that. So one of them right now is in a great town here in North Texas. I don't want to give too much information away because could have some
It's a
issues.
small world.
It's a very small world. And I have a great story for you later if we have time about how small this world really is. And it happened to me last night. But yeah, this deal is a piece of dirt in a very highly sought after area that has, you know, a 7-figure payout. And we're in the middle of putting together all of the family members, extended family members for the past 100 years. So I think we're up to like 36 or 37 different individuals that we're putting together, trying to get them to sell us a little piece at a time. And then we're doing affidavits of heirship. And then eventually we'll get 100% control of that property. I think that we're sitting at about 94, 95% right now. And the last guy, one of the last holdouts, there's 2 major holdouts. They've agreed to basically do a joint venture with us on the sale. You know, they're like 0.06% or whatever. They'll get a payout of whatever that we make. And they're gonna have to pay closing fees and all this other stuff. And quite honestly, we've tried to tell these people so many times, like, you know, if you just take our cash offer, you're gonna make more money. But they don't see it that way. It's just simple math. So, you know, it is what it is. But they've agreed to go along for the ride. We're in the middle of getting permits to pull down structures right now. So hopefully the permits will be in sometime this week, if not next, and that'll be taken care of by the end of the month. We should be ready to go, hopefully by the end of the month, to put this thing on the market, which is super exciting because like our all-in costs right now are around $70,000, $80,000. So that's exciting
for like a 6 or 7 figure spread.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then we've got another, not as great of a deal, but we bought 50% of a property east of the Dallas area that was kind of tied up in a divorce. I don't know why the judge did this, but essentially, you know, he made them tenants in common in a divorce. So which basically like ties them back into being partners. But we own 50% of that. We've been unable to get the other party to engage through ourselves or our lawyer or whatever. We've given this guy multiple offers, multiple opportunities just to even say, go pound sand. And he's not playing at all. So, you know, we do have a right in the state of Texas to ask for a partition of the land. So it's a big tract. It's like, you know, it's 25 acres. So we want our half and we just want to turn around and sell it. Or, you know, the judge can order us to sell together. So we actually have a court date coming up towards the end of April, which I'm excited about. We just got the official filing and court date awarded to us last week. So that's cool.
If they do the partition, how do they determine who owns which half? Because sometimes the east half or the west half is more valuable.
That's true, and that is true in this scenario. It's a big rectangle, and on one side of the fence there's a really pretty pond, and the other side of the fence is not a pond, but that's where the water tap and the electricity is. So I'm not sure, honestly.
You probably have to get each side appraised
separately, probably. Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. It's good, it's exciting, and I like to keep my eyes open. I tell my kids this, I tell just about everybody this is like, if you just can keep your eyes open to see, potential in weird things, then you
Right.
can go make things happen. That's what's happened with this apartment deal. Like there's a 50 no it's a 70-year-old car wash on this property. And I was just driving past it. I'm like, oh, there's a for sale sign. So let's figure that out. And then turned out it was zone multifamily. Like, oh, contract, let's go. Oh,
Yeah.
we'll see how it works out.
Every few months, I feel like I run across a business model where it's just so encouraging. Because a lot of times, whatever business model you got started out in, you start to believe that you just got lucky and that life is really hard and you're one of the lucky ones that just had the timing right, which could be true. But I think for the most part, all business models work just fine. And it's finding the right one that you're good at. And then, as I was saying, every few months I come across like a really creative one where I'm like, wow, I didn't even know you could make money doing that. That's pretty cool. And it's just so encouraging because I feel like there's so many ways out there to make money, and it's like life is a playground, right?
Well, I agree with you. And the hard part, at least for people like me, right? I don't want to put us in a box, but I mean, it's kind of the truth. People like me that are, high, W-2 income earners, whether that's going to be a pilot, a lawyer, a doctor, a whatever, right? We get so sucked into our profession that,
The golden handcuffs.
yeah, it becomes your identity, right? And that's a lot of the stuff that I've been going through on a personal level is like I've known for a long time that I needed to do something different. I just felt it inside of me that I needed to be doing something different. And I remember during COVID, we had an RV. I bought opportunistically, I bought an RV right before COVID really, really hit. So I stole this 40-foot Jayco, diesel.
You got a great deal on it.
Got a great deal on it. And we drove it around the country and we did some cool things. And I remember my wife, and she knew this was like part of my plan for a long time. She's like, maybe you should, step up your game to get out of the flying business and do it sooner. Because I always had this goal of like,
Right.
I'm going to be done flying airplanes at 45, but now let's move that up.
Well, and I know you and I have been meeting almost every week for 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I know how cushy and safe the flying job has become because there was a season where you didn't even need to fly airplanes. You were just going to the what do you call it? Like where you're the instructor in the
Yeah,
the simulator.
Simulator, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an instructor on the Airbus, and I've been certified to do that for gosh 8 years now, I guess. So yeah, let's just put it this way: in the last 8 years, I mean, I probably have flown maybe 300 hours, maybe.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't even
what
know.
is that for a normal pilot? That's like a month of flying? No, that'd be like 2 months.
No, that'd probably be. That would probably be like 4 or 5. Like they fly like,
Okay.
70, 80 hours a month. That's
Okay.
it's a normal flying gig.
So that's one thing I noticed is it's almost reverse of what you'd think, but the higher your W-2 income is, the harder it is to like make that leap.
Yeah.
I mean, so I had good six figure pay in the army, very cushy, very financially safe. And then I left and I kind of had to take a couple steps down when I hopped into corporate America. I pretty much started at entry level pay in my like at age 30, right? Which was a hit to my ego. But it did two things. It was such an easy job that when COVID started and we went home, I realized I could do it in 2 hours a day. And then secondly, I gotta put my computer in do not disturb. And then secondly, the pay was so low that just psychologically, like once I made a small chunk of change in the land business, I was able to jump ship so quick because it just made so much sense. It's like I just made my annual salary in 4 months with a side hustle. Like why not do it full time, right?
Yeah.
So I've been watching you for almost 5 years now, and I've loved seeing your journey. One thing I've noticed is like you had the cojones to skip a lot of levels and lands. Typically, you start off like buy for 3,000, sell for 9,000 in the middle of the desert, and then you move to like buy for 30, sell for 60, and then you slowly move up, like buy for 250, sell for 450, right? And
Yeah.
you guys, you and David, your partner, you just kind of skipped, like you started off, you proved the business model on the cheap stuff, and then you just skipped and you immediately chased $1 million deal. And I sat on the bleachers for that deal, and I know it was very stressful, but tell me if this sounds about right. But basically it took you guys a year and you made like 1.5 or something. And it was a very stressful year.
Yeah, on that one deal, yeah. So yeah, happy to share about that. So we were doing mailers, we were going after the bigger stuff, and so when you're doing this stuff, you have a process, right? You're like, oh, I'm only going to look for this type of land in this area, and we do like a lot of we were doing a lot of like pre-comping areas and stuff, that just so like if it's going to move or not.
Right.
So we put together this package for a town or a county just northwest of where I live. It's about 45 minutes. One night I got a phone call from this guy Jim, and he's like, I got this letter in the mail from you, and just very, very Texas, right? And we've had this land in our family since the 1800s, and it's got really bad title issues and all this stuff. And I'm just like, So one thing I've learned is if you let people talk, they will tell you exactly what the pain points are, what their problems are, and that's how you can gauge on how to help them or help them fix it or whatever. So basically it came down to this particular property had severe title issues to the point where that they couldn't even gift the property to a university. They tried. They
Right.
said they tried to give it away, and they couldn't give it away. And so finally they were just kind of done dealing with it, done paying the taxes on it. And then I was like, well, Jim, I think that we can help you with that. I think we have the right legal team, to get this, over the
Right.
goalpost. And he's like, well, we've talked to a lawyer before. And I was like, okay, well, what did that lawyer say? And he kind of told me, and I was like, man, that just doesn't sound right to me, but I would be happy to talk to my lawyer and, see what he thinks. So we hung up, and I called our guy the next day. And, keep in mind that phone call came in at like 7 o'clock at night. And here's the funny thing is I was standing out in front of my house, because it was quiet time in my house here for the kids or whatever. And they were a little bit younger back then. So we spooled down a little bit earlier. And there's a train track about, I don't know, half a mile from my house. Excuse me. Excuse me. And the train goes by, blows the horn, and I could hear on my phone that
the same train horn.
Train horn. And I'm like, where do you live at? He goes, I live out here and wherever. And I was like, oh, that's really close to me. Like, are you in this area? Yes, I'm in this area. I'm like, well, we should get together for coffee. So we did. We got together for coffee, and
Nice.
we started the process. But yeah, so that we got a hold of our attorney and kind of put it all out there to him. And he goes, oh yeah, that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Actually, it turned out to be a really big deal. We wound up suing, I think, like 46 or 47 different people. Now, keep in mind, like the majority of those people, like the vast majority of them, they were all deceased. So, but
Right.
just getting.
And for people who aren't in the real estate business, often when you sue someone over messy title stuff, like Jeff isn't like saying, I'm going to ruin your life, like give me your net worth. He's essentially saying, hey, like I have equitable interest in this property, and I want you to cooperate with me, and like let's do it together. It's more of like a formal request for cooperation.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And so we had the four major players, which they were all cousins, that were in agreement with us that this was the best path to proceed. So we did. And so we went through a year of getting affidavits of heirship, putting notices out to people, again, sue them. I know that's not a great term, but that's really what it is. But again, the vast majority of these folks were deceased. And then, so it came down to, we had to go up to the county courthouse, and, it was very nostalgic. You go in this courthouse, it's built in the 1800s, and the case goes back and forth, and the attorneys talk, and they do all this stuff. And the judge comes down and he hits the gavel, and we basically had the rights to the property. So we closed on it immediately through the title company. So we had basically a clean title at that point. We stroked a check for $1.91 for that property, cash out of pocket, $1.91. That was
So that's
it.
what you spent. So did the lawyers roll their fees into the exit?
Yes, correct. Yep, they
That's
sure did.
awesome.
Yep. Actually, well, so they actually rolled their fees into the note. So we got a note from an agricultural bank that gave us 100% financing because we got the deal at like $350,000 and the property was worth 1.6 million. So they did 100% financing for us.
So you guys spent $2 and
Yep.
a whole bunch of stress
Yep.
to make like 1.3 or something.
Yeah. At the end of the day, so there was two parcels. It was all one parcel, but we sectioned one part of it out. It was 17 acres. So all said and done, it was like 1.6 million total. Yeah.
I love it. See, that's so encouraging because you were able to solve a problem that other people weren't, and you were able to roll up your sleeve and do the work that other people didn't want to do, and you got rewarded for it.
Well, and honestly, the coolest thing about the entire process is that when we were in the courtroom with the family members, they were hugging my partner and myself, shaking hands, tears, like finally this burden is over
Right.
with, it's done. And that was the most rewarding part. It wasn't the sale of the property, and it's like, okay, yeah, so we sold it for, 1.6 million, but my mind was immediately like, well, okay, so we climbed that mountain, what's the next mountain? And that's
Right.
that's
Well, you solved a 100-year problem and got rewarded for it,
yes,
right?
yes.
I love that. I was wondering, and then we're going to get into some questions. I have some questions that I've been asking the guests lately.
Sure.
I was wondering very briefly. I know Jen helps with this. Jen is a very competent CPA, your wife. But how do you keep all these different business models straight? Because none of them are in the same sphere. Like, how do you keep from going crazy? Because that's one of the reasons why I don't want to say I cut it. I sold Landed the Free because I wanted to be really good at one thing. And so I kept Rooster Capital. I sold Landed the Free. But how you've kind of chosen a different method. How do you do it?
So there's a great book, I believe it's called Who, Not How, that has been very instrumental in helping me, kind of put all of this stuff together. And then obviously, the late great Sam Zell, he's fantastic. Keeping this all together is, yes, it's more than a full-time job without a doubt. So basically my methodology, short of the roofing company with all of this, is putting the right team in place or the right people in place, to help these processes along. Like, so if you go with Bravara Home, for example, so we're the owners of the company, but we have an operator. They handle all logistics from manufacturing to getting our product into Amazon. So we have a weekly call every week. We just act in the CEO capacity. We come up with the ideas, the vision, they go and execute it. With the apartment complex, that again, Brian is running that entire show. So I just kind of act as an advisory role. And that's how I've set a lot of these things up is with partnerships to help facilitate these things. And there's several books out there. I mean, as you know, like there's a billion books out there on businesses. They're not all great, but all of them in my mind kind of have the same theme: is you can't be a single person and be great at everything. You have to have a team around you, right?
Right.
And you have to cultivate those teams through good, positive feedback and being generous and being nice. And that's how you get things done.
And I've noticed that about you. But so here's my question, Jeff. Like with me, I got Land of the Free down to where I had automated it about 99%, and I was down to about 5 hours a week of my involvement. And that was mostly like coaching, mentoring kind of time. It wasn't me in some sort of system clicking buttons. But what I found is even though it took up 5 hours a week, which would, out of a 40-hour work week, that's 1/8 of my time, it took up like half of my cognitive, like mental bandwidth, right? Mm-hmm. So in theory, on a schedule, I could have started 8 other businesses, for 5 hours a week each, right? But I would have gone crazy because my brain would have felt like 4 times maxed out, right? So how do you like silo? I don't want to call it stress, but like the burden of being the owner. How do you silo that so that each one, like if a business is 10% of your net worth, takes 10% of your time, how do you make sure it only takes up 10% of your mental bandwidth?
I don't have a good answer for that, to be honest with you, because I have got, fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, like my brain is like continuously moving. And that's probably why sometimes like I have difficult time sleeping, but that's a different subject. But, I really try to, I don't do it as well as I should, but I really try to do like kind of like the Dan Martell way of things of just like, I've got this amount of time, for this and this and this. And then obviously at night, whether it's, interacting with the kids or whatever that is, like I'm still thinking about those things. Like just even driving down the street, it's like, yeah, we could do this and this would be cool. So then I'll call one of my partners and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And I've gotten in trouble many times with my wife and my partner's wives sometimes for, just calling out of the blue, right? To talk about stuff that just takes up too much time. So we've had to, set some boundaries into all of that. And one of the guys that's been instrumental, one of my partners, his name's Shep. He's a cool dude. He's a private equity guy, so he came from like a big private equity house, and he went out on his own years ago. But he was kind of the one that was like, hey, look, I've got like 6 other projects right now, and so if you need to get a hold of me, you need to text me, and we'll set up a time to talk. And I was like, kind of like that was my cue, to kind of start putting things in these silos. But to answer your question, like how do I deal with those things, and how do I
Like, are you sitting at dinner and you're like thinking about work stuff, and then you realize that somebody's been talking to you and you just feel bad?
No, I've never, no, like if I'm sitting down talking to somebody, like you will have my attention. Like
No, I don't mean me. I mean like your wife or your kids.
No, not really. Like if somebody wants to talk, I will talk to them. I don't think I really go off into space on my own, like at a dinner table or whatever. Like if I'm there, I'm there. So I don't think I do that.
Because one of the challenges I have is like, I'll be in my own world. I'm eating my chili or whatever, and I'll realize that my wife is talking to me. Like, part of me is like, how am I supposed to know she's talking to me? And then obviously the rebuttal is, well, you're at dinner with your family. Like, you should be paying attention,
right?
Yeah. But it's hard to turn off the brain sometimes, especially because, dinner takes place around 6 p.m. And if like a lot of times I wrap up work around 5:30, right? So it's just hard to make that transition. I imagine that you're much better than me at doing that because you got 10 extra years under your belt, and you've probably been forced to compartmentalize all of those projects because you just have so many.
Well, it's like, it's like flying planes, right? Like when you're an airline pilot, whether you think about it or not, like you're continuously compartmentalizing things continuously, right? Because you've got your family at home, you've got the airplane that you're dealing with. You might have a problem with the airplane, you might have a problem with the flight attendant in the back. Maybe the first officer doesn't like you, or you don't like them, or whatever, right? So like there's just probably been an ingrained thing to me of just like there's a compartment for everything. And so whether that's good or bad, I have no idea. But I mean, that's probably how we get here to this.
Yeah. I have so many plane questions for you with the recent crashes, but we're going to skip that and get into some questions. Okay, Jeff, how would you define happiness? Is it the same as contentment, fulfillment, joy? What do you think?
I think being happy is being able to do what you want to do and having the support from your family to do those things. And here's why. So I tell Jen all the time that I am so grateful that she has helped me go from this guy that would go fly an airplane, come home, and then do nothing to, hey, I'm home all the time. We're interacting. We're our business partners. We're husband and wife. We are parents. And getting the kids rallied around that. They're like, oh, hey, Dad, what did you do today? Did you make another deal? Or how's the apartment? Or how's Brevara? Or how's this going? I think that to me is what the happiness is.
It's just like flow state, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the answer. I've gotten a lot of good answers this week. Okay, so we've actually found that some studies are showing that there's not really a big difference between a drug addict's brain and an entrepreneur's brain.
Agreed 100%.
So, and we all know that, we're all good at obsessing over things. Yeah. And entrepreneurs, for the most part, have just chosen to obsess over positive things, right?
Yes.
Do you believe that balance exists?
In what?
I don't know. I've noticed with myself and a lot of my peers that we seem to ping pong between two extremes where you're either way overcommitted or you cut projects and then you're way understimulated. Like I seem to swing between boredom and high stress like very quickly, sometimes day to day.
I,
And it's just the question is like, is there a middle ground or is that just not in the cards for personality types that start
I don't.
companies?
I agree with you 100%. Like I do swings probably day to day, not so much like in the day, but from day to day. There are times that I'm like highly motivated, highly committed to like I've got to get this big old list of things done. For example, like on for due diligence, right? So I dive into it head first, right? And I'm like committed and focused. And then the next day I'm like, okay, well, I did all the things I needed to do. Like I'm kind of bored. I'm gonna go get my golf clubs and I'm gonna go hit golf balls, because then that pulls like the ability for me to have some me time because I love golf. Like it's probably the one thing, that, sports wise, like that allows me to feel normal, if that makes sense. But I agree with you. Like for me, I don't know if there's any like really true balance other than this big, like you said, ping pong and back and forth, yin and yang and back and forth on a daily basis.
Yeah, like sometimes I think about like let's say I'm stressed about something, I'll fantasize about like slashing all my projects and just keeping Rooster Capital bare bones. I only use my own money because currently Rooster Capital, about 50% of the deals I fund is arbitrage money and the other half is my own money. And when I arbitrage money, I make half the amount for like 2 to 3 times more work. So it's the law of diminishing returns. Yeah. So I could make 2/3 of Rooster Capital's current income for like 10% of the work if I wanted. Yep. Because I stop arbitraging. I fund less deals, right? And then in this fantasy, that's what I do. And then we move to South Korea and live a simple life, right? With a burn rate of like 30 grand a year. But then I walk through that fantasy or the mental exercise. And by day 3, I'm already bored. I'm bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
Right. And so then what does bored Drew do if he's not going to start a new business model? He's going to play video games and drink soju. And so that's not productive. Right. And so I just feel like, yeah, like there's no right answer. And maybe just the fact that we're seeking the answer is down the right path.
I think so. Like, so I don't hide this at all. Like I've been seeing a therapist, like a business coach therapist, for a long time. And I told her a while back, I said like, well, when's enough enough? Can you tell me when that is? And she's like,
he says that?
No, I said that to her. It's a her. And I said, can you just tell me when enough is enough? And she's like, no, like that's something you're going to have to, find inside of yourself. Like, well, I don't know what that is. Like, I have no idea. And maybe, like you said, like we're on this path of discovering it. And maybe this guy, Jim, that I met a month ago, he's the guy that owns the property right directly next door to the apartment complex that we want to put up, the car wash. And he was a huge developer. Like he did multifamily, all kinds of stuff, SFR, everything. And he lives down in the Keys now. And he met us for a meeting up here in Texas because we're trying to get a permanent easement in his property for 15 parking spaces so that we can get the amount of doors we want. And I was like, why'd you get down to the Keys, man? He's like, I just had it. He's like, I sold everything. He's like, I had a little health scare. I sold everything, all my businesses, all the properties, everything, put them all under management or whatever. And he's like, I just moved to the Keys and all I do is fish now. And he's like, that was the best decision I've ever done. So maybe he was in that same boat. He's probably in his like mid 50s, 55-ish. And he just got to a point where he got to the end of the road, like you said,
yeah.
I'm done. And maybe that's what it takes. Maybe that's what it takes. And I think that's probably the most plausible idea for, folks like us.
I feel like if that was me, I would be understimulated and always wondering if I threw in the towel too early. Like it almost seems morally wrong. Like if you can help the world, like I just wonder if I would be sitting there fishing and just feeling like I had more to give and I chose not to.
Yeah, I don't know. But it could all just be related to the circumstance, right? So maybe in this guy's case, his health scare was like, hey, like I need to take a step back. It's time to think about me.
Right.
you know,
And
because
maybe he's not going to do that for the next 30 years. Maybe it's a 3-year thing and then he gets bored and hops back in.
yeah, maybe.
Right. Okay. So next question. I mean, we've kind of talked about this. Is it a 2-dimensional spectrum between quality family time and focus on building your business? Time can be expanded with delegation, which is what you talked about, but is our mental bandwidth and focus finite? We've kind of already talked about this. But do you think like it's a spectrum, like a give or take?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer that, to be honest with you. I really don't.
I'm getting a lot of yes. Like Justin Pichet was like, yeah, I think it's finite. You know, I think so too, but I always want to see if other people see differently because I'm always wanting to be challenged.
Well,
All right.
So a question I would have to that is, well, can you expand your bandwidth?
That's exactly that. Like, and how do we do it? Right. I don't know. Maybe we need to do some monk stuff in the mountains, get some serotonin flowing.
There you go.
Okay, so Jeff, you may have not gone through this season yet, but what do you do when your cash cow business is no longer new and exciting? It can feel like a version of handcuffs. So have you gone through a season of boredom? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah, definitely gone through a season of boredom. Like, so with, with our land business, like it's spooling down. To be honest with you, the last 2 years, as you know, and you and I've talked about this extensively, but for like the last 2 years, like we just have not been able, to convert. So what we did initially was we started pivoting to different ideas and different automations and, the whole thing. Right. And, for whatever the reason was, we can never really get things going back again, just doing like bread and butter stuff. Like I've mentioned, we've got like some big projects, but like the bread and butter stuff, we could just never really get going. And maybe that was because it was boring. And that's probably honestly part of the reason. Look, like I don't particularly, I'm good at it, but I don't like to call people and try to get them to commit to sell things to me, or I don't like to sell things to other people. I like to tell stories, and I really believe that having cool stories to tell of experiences, is a way to connect with people. But in general, like we probably got bored and we probably didn't pivot enough, or we got too scared, or we got into too big of deals, and then all the small ones looked, not appetizing enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and part of me wonders, like, think about most business models. Aren't 99% of business models inherently boring?
Yeah.
Like when you think about what they do on a day-to-day basis, very repetitive, right?
Very repetitive, yeah.
Yeah. So I just wonder, I don't know. I think about that stuff.
Well, yeah. And then it's like, so you get bored, and maybe that's the problem with, being an entrepreneur, right? Is that you just get bored and you're like, oh, there's the next thing over there, right?
Right. But you know that you shouldn't cut what's working just because you're bored. That's dumb, right? But a lot of us, we also can't handle being bored because we were the kid who couldn't sit still in class.
That's me, and that's gonna be my son in the future. Like he stands up at his desk. He does his best work standing up. And we just finally had to tell the teacher, like, hey, just let him stand. Like, it's not going to change the world if he just stands.
In the military, if you get tired, if you're in a class in the military, you get tired, you're supposed to stand in the back. So, I spent over, if you include ROTC, I spent like, I think 17 years in the military. Wow. And so that was normal to me. And so like in church, if I was tired, I'd go stand in the back. And then I realized that like the rest of the world just, I don't know what you guys do, civilians. If you get tired, you just sit there and be all tired. In the military, we stand up, and that's normal. But you can get some weird looks sometimes. Okay, last question. And again, I don't know if you've wrestled with this because I think you're in a very exciting season. But when I think about starting a new business model, I have conflicting tension between two truths. Okay, so truth number one, I know deep down inside that I'm capable of being successful at almost anything, because I've done it multiple times, right? I know that with most business models, with the right timing, with the right strategy, I can successfully execute it and make money doing it, right? Yeah. But at the same time, truth number two, I also know how much work it is to start a new business. And that's almost more of a deterrent than like point number one is encouraging. Meaning like, I feel like I'm less likely to start a new business now than I was 5 years ago when I was like blissfully ignorant. because I know how much work it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
if you thought about that.
I have definitely thought about this, and I have a great answer for it. It might not be the right one, but I have a great answer for it. Is I don't think I'm going to start businesses anymore. And
You're
what
just
I
going to
mean by
buy
that,
them.
I'm just going to buy them. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the buy then build, strategy, because it makes, in my mind, after, reading some books on it and talking to some folks about it, like it makes the most sense to buy something that's already, sustainable, that already has a good EBITDA,
Right.
bring fresh ideas into it, streamline, centralize, all the workflows, everything, right? And grow it. Like it's so much less of a hassle to do it that way than it is to, even this Bravara home thing. I love Jen and I love doing this with my wife. It's fun, but literally starting from scratch, you have to have things manufactured in a country in China. I didn't want to say third
Yep.
world country, but I almost did. And dealing with, well, wait a minute, why can't you just do it this way? Oh, well, we have to do this. And then, okay, well, where are my boxes at? The boxes should have been here 3 months ago. Oh,
Right.
well, they're on back order.
So yeah,
That stuff
somebody already
stresses.
figured that stuff out.
Somebody already
Might
figured
as
it
well
out.
just pay a small premium and get a head start. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I found out too, and I'm sure you know this, is it's substantially easier to raise capital, whether that's going to be, through a loan or an SBA or equity raise or anything like that, on an established business already. It's much
Right.
easier to do
'Cause it's
that.
got a track record.
Yeah.
It's got inventory, assets.
Yeah.
I do think if I had to start over tomorrow, that I would immediately do the silver tsunami strategy, where you're buying businesses from baby boomers. Because the thing with any business owner, and this was true for me when I was selling my first business, is you care less about the price you get, and you care more about making sure it goes to the right buyer, because you care about your team and you
Yeah.
care about the legacy of the business. And so if you're the right buyer for baby boomers in their 70s, and they're happy to pass it down to somebody in their 30s or 40s, and they know it's going to be taken good care of, you could probably get a great deal,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's exciting. I like to think about that. I like to think about boring business models like car washes and accounting firms and just stuff that consistently makes money. And the most stressful thing with those is usually the people aspect. But I feel like with my wife and also your wife, they're the ones who could kind of come in and help with a lot of that employee mentorship and help with some of that interpersonal conflict. And, Betty's been working there for 19 years and she doesn't like Sally. Sally's been there for 2 years, but Sally outperforms Betty. And how do you deal with this like conflict? I think that's the kind of challenges those businesses have. And I think if you're willing to work through that and you enjoy helping people, I think it's a win for everybody.
absolutely. I agree. And, not to belabor, like, this whole roofing takedown that we're working on right now, but yeah, there's 4 employees that have been there for many, many years, seemingly, from what I can see right now, because I don't have really much any access, but just from the outside, it seems like they all get along. We're going to probably do a very small, retention for them, show them our big plans. We've got a 15-point growth strategy that these folks that own the company right now are not doing at all. And like as simple as, let's answer the phone on the weekend. Let's get a Pat Live or
Right.
some AI thing to answer the phone on the weekend. Because when the biggest customer, the guy that's got on an Excel sheet that's got 4,000 lines under their name, they call, like, we should be answering the phone.
Exactly. Yep.
Just very, very simple stuff like that. And so, the goal for this, and you mentioned the silver tsunami, is we want to take this down, and then we're already starting to look at some of these other mom and pop that are like a million top line, maybe with a 200,000 300,000 EBITDA or less. We're already starting to look for those things, and I found a tool from a guy he's in Atlanta, that basically scrapes all of the data off of like LinkedIn and all these other things. And I'm sure that about all those services. I didn't know this, but you could literally type in like, roof owners or CEOs or CFOs or whatever, and it will go scrape the entire internet looking for whatever parameters you put in there. And it's you could pull a data set for an area that shows all of roofing companies that are $1 million or less or whatever. right? You can do that. So we're going to implement those strategies, and we're going to go out and acquire some of these other companies to basically build a big one.
I love it. It's so interesting, and I've loved kind of being a witness and seeing you grow. One thing, so yesterday, Jeff, I was walking, and if do you have to go?
No, no, no.
It's the top of the hour. I was walking, so I'm here in Osaka, and I was walking back. I got a massage for $23 for a whole hour, and I was walking back from that, and I passed a little cupcake shop, and it had this neon sign and it said "Daddy and Katie's Cupcake Shop," and I'm like, that's so cool. And I thought, because one of my greatest dreams is what at least one of my daughters becomes an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and I can like live that with her.
Yep.
And I thought it'd be so cool so you rent storefront office space and you have some business model with your daughter, and you don't even care if it's a successful business model because you want the office space anyways to work in. So you're like doing your other stuff. And if people come in, you stand up and help them with their cupcakes or like whatever you're selling. And to me, it just seems so cool because it's like no risk, win no matter what kind of idea. And if you like feel like the future of schooling with kids, I don't want to say it's homeschooling, but I do think it's going to be a less structured, less traditional model where, because my 6-year-old, she's in independent study, which is a special program within the public school system where like that's why we can travel. So she goes through her curriculum. It's a national level curriculum. She goes through it on her computer and she meets with her teacher once a week on Zoom. And I feel like that's the future. I feel like we're going to start to see a lot of young entrepreneurs, kids that have the flexibility. Because my 6-year-old, she can get through a whole day in about an hour and 20 minutes. And so we've been doing triple days. She's been moving very fast. But that's something I've been thinking about. And I know you with your 2 kids who you love spending time with them, and I'm sure you've thought about that as well.
Definitely thinking about it more, and we don't need to get into any of all that, but I'll just say that here in Texas, I'm less than impressed, and we live in a very good school district, and our property taxes reflect that. But we live in a very good school district. But I do think that at some point we're going to make a move out of Texas, and it will probably wind up doing some sort of homeschooling, especially with Raylan, my daughter, because she's, I don't want to say she's an elite gymnast, but she's on her path to being, an elite gymnast. I mean, she just got first place at a national deal in Orlando 2 weeks ago. So she's very good. She's very committed. She's very motivated. And if she wants to continue down that path, we're going to have to find something for her. And then also you said something to me a while back, and I tell this to my kids quite a bit. And I also, Jen and I talk about this quite a bit, is that, and I can't remember the exact verbiage, so don't scold me for this, but you said something along the lines of, if you are something about working at like a high level, like your ability to visualize or fantasize or see things that opportunities, it becomes less and less and less. And so like I'm trying to teach my kids of like, hey, keep your eyes open and, don't let the small things distract you and just kind of go with the flow and keep your eyes open.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure. Any plugs you wanna make, a way people can get a hold of you, any event you're hosting or thing you're selling, any kind of thing that you want to get out to the world?
Not hosting any events right now. I think that for now, Brevara Home, so it's right here, BRIVARA, is going to be the one that hopefully folks take a look at. So, we're going to sell exclusively on Amazon. So when we launch, it'll be on there. And that's probably going to be the next year or 2 thing. Hopefully we get to like a full e-commerce site, or we do some third-party retailing. But, there's just a ton of logistics that have to go into that.
Yep.
For now, we'll hopefully have the website up, brevarahome.com. And then from there, you'll be able to link right over to our page on Amazon. So that'd be the one that hopefully people would visit. If somebody wanted to reach out, Jeff at Brevara Home would be a good one. I can get emails there. So I just set all that up last week. So it's kind of exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, sir, thanks for, go ahead.
No, do we have 2 minutes? Because I want to tell you this story real quick. Okay.
Sure.
I know you need to go. Okay.
No, I don't.
The world is
6 a.m. here.
The world is very small. So yesterday, Jen and I were coming back from Chicago. So we went to like the world's second largest or third largest home show in Chicago, and tons of crazy winds, weather, all that stuff here in Texas, right? So we were stuck in Chicago for like 3 or 4 hours. So we're sitting in the American Airlines Club, and this lady comes and sits down directly across from me, and she's what I presume she's talking to her daughter, and she's trying to calm her down and tell her everything's going to be okay. And
She's on the phone.
she's on the phone, and I was sitting there like, I love this. Like, this is so cool that, the mom is helping, obviously in an extremely stressful situation for whatever's going on in the background, just calming the situation down. And so we were kind of like packing up, and we sat there for a couple hours, and she sat there for a couple hours. And finally I just was like, I'm going to tell her that I admire how she's handling that situation, and so turns out that her daughter is a flight attendant for a regional airline. I think it's PSA or something like that. But she wants to become a pilot. I said, okay, well, where do you live? Like, well, we live in Atlanta. I'm like, well, I know so-and-so that's a Delta pilot that is an ex-Marine, and she's really cool, and she would probably want to do some mentoring, and whatever.
Yeah.
It turns out that these two ladies, the daughter and my friend, have already been communicating in a mentorship capacity, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, like, how small the world is. And then even, if you reach out and just, touch someone, that, you can have a positive effect on their day. So, like, those are the things that I think that are very important.
I used to always tell my team that even if we don't buy a property from someone or sell them a property, our goal is just to make their day 1% better.
100%.
And we can make the world a better place even if we're not making money from every single conversation. The thing I was thinking about on your story, Jeff, is how did you get into an American lounge? Because you're a captain at Spirit Airlines.
I paid for it.
Oh, you paid. What are they, $50 nowadays?
I don't know. I think it was like, I think it was $60 or something like that. But I knew going into all of that we were going to have several delays. And so I like to be comfortable. Like I have spent so much time in airports at the food court and sitting in uncomfortable chairs. Like I know it sounds snobbish, but I just refuse to be, uncomfortable.
It's a different world in there. I mean, Renee has gold status for life with United.
Oh, cool.
And so we've spent a lot of time in lounges, and then also for a while I had the Platinum Centurion card. Yep. Those are super crowded, so I'm not crazy about those. But have you been to lounges overseas?
I have not, no.
It's like a whole nother level. So I would say I've never been in a first class lounge in the States, but I imagine that a economy lounge overseas is equal to a first class lounge in the US. So like a United lounge in the US has basically free Bud Light and like free peanuts and celery, and like lower end red wine, right? That same lounge, because with United, they have partner airlines, and overseas you get to go to the partner airlines lounges. They have like mid-shelf liquor that you pour yourself, like is very dangerous if you're just there unsupervised.
Right.
They have all kinds of sodas, all kinds of coffees. They have real food, like legitimate, like food that you'd eat for dinner, not just snacky stuff. And I've experienced this in Europe, Asia, Southeast Asia, and it's just so much fun. So if you're ever traveling overseas, pay for an entrance and just experience. We've even had one where someone walks around and massages your shoulders.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I think it's because the labor is cheaper in a lot of countries. But anyways, that's a pro tip from Drew, the traveler.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, thanks for being on. It's always a pleasure. Yeah. And until next time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your time. Have a great one.
Yep. Peace. All right. That's it for today. I hope this conversation got you thinking and maybe even questioning a few things. And that's the point. This isn't about having all the answers. It's about figuring it out together. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring these ideas, make sure to subscribe and follow me over at theothersideofenough.com. Let's keep the conversation going and see you next time.